case manager, and today I have with me two people from the charity Fifth Sense, which is the charity for people affected by smell and taste disorders. So I'd like to introduce Duncan Boak, who's founder and chair of Fifth Sense, and his colleague Nina Hill, who is the Director of Development and Operations. Welcome both, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Vicki.
Hi, thank you.
It's a real pleasure to have you here, and I know that in the past I've heard you speak, Duncan, and it really made me stop and think about the impact of a change in smell and taste. And so I wondered if you could tell us a little bit today about that, about how you came to set up Fifth Sense, and a little bit about the background for the people that you serve.
Sure. So the starting point for me was losing my sense of smell through a traumatic brain injury in 2005 when I was 22 years old. And, this is something that altered my experience and quality of life in all sorts of ways that I didn't really understand and comprehend properly for years after the accident, because I'd never had any understanding of the sense of smell, what it does for us, what it contributes to our lives when I did have it. It's something that we're not really taught about at school. There's very little understanding or appreciation of the sense of smell amongst most of us, really. And I suppose the motivation for starting the charity, that partly came from the fact that when I had the accident, I went to see my doctor and said, I've had a really bad brain injury. I'm lucky to be alive. I can't smell anymore. What can you tell me? And my doctor couldn't tell me anything. It was this response. His response was, we don't know much about it. This is very rare. I have heard of this happening to people, but that's all I can tell you. There's nothing I can really do. It might come back of its own accord. Give it 6 months to a year. If not, you'll just have to live with it. And it did. It had a really big impact on me. And I think, thinking back to our first conversation, Vicki, a few years ago, the way I've described it to people, described to you then, was it's like being stuck behind a pane of glass. You can feel that you're an observer on your own life, if you like. You can see and hear and touch, but there's this removal of this incredibly important layer of experience, emotional experience and emotional richness that smell brings, whether it's smelling the flowers in your garden, whether it's being in bed next to your partner and the smell of their skin, smell of their hair that tells you it's them next to you and no one else. And it's the smells that surround us and enter us and fill our brains and our memories, daily. Having that suddenly taken away has a really big impact on people. And the fact that, in 2005, when this happened to me, there was no organisation that could help me, support me and guide me. There was no one my GP could signpost me to. And in 2012, I decided to create it. The Fifth Sense was born.
And I'd like to pick up on that in a moment, but before we do, I'd like to find out a little about Nina and how you've come into post, Nina, and where you fit with this and what your experience is.
I spent 15 years working for the NHS in Cumbria, and I did an NHS leadership course last year, and through that, Duncan and I had a mutual connection. And as the health economy here was changing last year, the post was advertised on Twitter, or it was advertised through tweeting. And I commented, that looks really interesting. It's a shame it's in Leeds, because I live in Cumbria. And straight away, our mutual connection private messaged me and said, you need to speak to Duncan. You guys would really get along. And so I contacted Duncan and did some research into smell and taste disorders. Went along for the interview, and in the course of that research, I realised that actually I had experienced phantosmia. Didn't know what it was at the time. I was smelling cigarette smoke in my house, and I've got 2 teenagers. And Duncan's heard this story so many times, and in my interview. And I had them literally pinned up against the wall, interrogating them within an inch of their life. I was in their school bags and their coats. And they were like, Mum, we haven't been smoking. My house is new, so I was thinking, well, it can't be haunted. But I can smell cigarette smoke. Spoke to a neurologist that I worked with at the time, and he said, well, you've got a stressful job. It could be stress, could be a virus, could be lots of things. Don't worry too much about it. I didn't really think about it, and it came and went over the course of a few weeks, and then didn't resurface until another few weeks ago when it started to reoccur. So it's something that comes and goes from me. I can smell normally in between, and if I sniff hard when I'm experiencing what it smells like is somebody outside smoking a cigarette. It's in this distance, it's almost like a wispy smell, and it goes. But if I sniff hard, I can smell everything else. If I picked up my coffee cup and sniffed it, I could smell my coffee. I can taste normally, but it's just in the background that it comes and goes and drifts in and out. It's really quite strange. So I didn't think I'd experienced anything to do with smell loss, but I obviously had. And so I went along for my interview, and it was through this sort of medium because I was in Cumbria and Duncan was with the panel in Leeds. And it was the best interview I've ever attended. I loved it. We had a really enjoyable conversation, although it was a formal interview. And I've never felt like that having been interviewed, but the values and the vision of the organisation really resonated with me. And we just hit a connection almost straight away through that. So I'm, that's my background and where I came from and my experience of smell disorders. I can't imagine what it must be like to have no sense of smell. And we've just been smelling coffee. I've just opened a new jar of coffee. And I always think that the first open of a jar of coffee smells so different from when it's halfway full. And we were just discussing in the office the different smells you get from one jar of coffee and how debilitating it must be to not be able to smell that. Something that simple that I take for granted.
And I think my experience working in the neuro rehab field has been one, until I met Duncan, of knowing that every now and then we would have clients who had altered sense of smell and taste or none, sometimes persistent, sometimes not. Probably the most we did with it was write it down within the assessment, and I don't think there was ever a thought about whether we could do anything about it, but also not really a thought about the impact of it. And you've both mentioned different smells that are very everyday things. We take them for granted, but as you say those things, I can really connect with them actually. And things like smell of new baby, and you're making me think of all the smells. We're surrounded with them all the time, but I think perhaps we do take that for granted until it's gone. And Duncan's explanation of that has stayed with me, the pane of glass, the feeling of disconnection is very great, in fact. So can you tell us a bit more then about the work of Fifth Sense and what you guys are doing to bring this to the fore?
So Fifth Sense is the charity for people affected by smell and taste disorders, and we provide support, information to others affected by a problem with a sense of smell or taste, and also, importantly, a signpost to potential diagnosis and treatment where such exists. We've got a network of clinicians, consultants, ear, nose and throat surgeons, one of whom is our fellow trustee Carl Philpott, who runs the UK's first NHS smell and taste disorder clinic, and it's with Carl who I connected in late 2011 and started talking, and that's when the idea for the charity came about.
So where's that service based?
Sorry?
Carl's service, where's that based?
Carl is, his clinic is at James Paget Hospital in Great Yarmouth.
Oh, Yarmouth, okay. And is that the only one in the UK?
No. There's another one, another smell and taste focused clinic at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, run by Miss Leisha McClelland.
Okay.
And then there are a number of specialist rhinology clinics. So rhinologists being specialists in disease of the nose and sinuses, who also see fifth sense beneficiaries and will diagnose and treat where treatment exists. The fact of the matter is that there are lots of people for whom medical treatment doesn't exist or is very limited, and there's a real need for improved medical services for patients, and also a need for increased research into the treatment of smell and taste disorders.
So if somebody has a change in their sense of smell and taste, and it's persistent, what can they do? You were explaining going to the GP and not really getting a response that took you anywhere. Has that changed? What can people do to get into that system?
Nina, do you want to?
So the pathways into any healthcare, I mean, as you'll know, are through the GP, and so when people do contact us to explain that they're experiencing differences or changes or loss of smell and taste, it is through their GP that they would access any specialist input. I guess, and again, like anything in the NHS, it's a little bit of a postcode lottery in terms of where you live in the country as to what tertiary and specialist centres you have access to. But it's not exclusive. So if a GP or a commissioning group agreed for somebody who lived in Cumbria to go to Newcastle, then that would be okay, for example. I mean, I guess our aim is to educate GPs that treatment is available, that there are specialist centres and ENT consultants who have an interest in smell and taste that can be contacted and referred to. And I guess I see part of my role as networking as much as I can to find out where these ENT consultants are, where it's not specifically a specialist rhinology clinic or a smell and taste clinic. And I think what the coronavirus has done is really illuminated smell and taste disorders, which has ignited some interest in it and at least some understanding in it at every level of the medical profession. And so where a GP may have, even last year, said there's nothing we can do, we don't know enough about it, are now becoming more educated and aware that actually this is quite critical, it's massively impactful, and there are places that people can be referred to. I guess the challenge in the current climate is, as numbers are growing in terms of people who are experiencing this, and not yet enough is known yet about newly acquired post-viral loss, there are still lots of people who've had it for a long time. But that awareness will be beneficial for everybody, I guess, in terms of generating education in primary care and opening the doors to specialist centres for people in the future.
I mean, it's
incredibly helpful for patients to know that there's somewhere they can go to get some support, but probably also for people like myself, for clinicians to go to find out more. And how do you get some support to get people listening, because it is sometimes difficult to get past that barrier if it is something that isn't known about, or where there's a perception that you perhaps can't do very much. So the fact that there's perhaps a change coming due to coronavirus and a greater awareness, but also the fact that you as an intermediary almost in that process can do something that feels different, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we've had an awful lot of contact with people who are emailing or commenting on social media to say, what can I do? And so we did design a response that we could utilise that was supported by our medical director, that could give good, qualified, evidence-based information. And that's been really helpful for people. And we've signposted them to our website where there's help and support, and also to self-help tools that they can do at home to help themselves in lieu of a medical diagnosis or medical treatment, depending on the causation. So we have a raft of tools on the website that we do direct people to, and we have email conversations quite a lot with people who are concerned and worried. So just having an organisation like ourselves to be able to go to for what can I do whilst I'm waiting to see my doctor, or what can I do to help myself. And a lot of people have accept that physical treatment may have some results or no results or a limit to results. There are things they can do in terms of helping themselves, using the memory, for example, to recall smells, using visual stimulation, what food looks like on a plate, for example, and experimenting with textures of food. So we do quite a lot of work in terms of putting our newsletter together, our social media posts, to try and make it as helpful and supportive, and meet the challenges that people report regularly. So yes, that's what we can do in terms of supporting people in the background.
And you've hinted there at some of the things that people can have a try with to see if they can either improve things or improve the experience where smell isn't there. So I guess I feel I need to come back to you, Duncan, to say you told us the story of how you got into this and losing your sense of smell. Obviously you're in a fantastic position to know of anything that you could do to try and make a difference. Has any of it made a difference for you?
Not for me personally. Not a huge amount has changed. Although an interesting thing is that when I was first in contact with Carl Philpott, and I decided to go and see Carl as a patient, and he examined me and did a scan and identified that in addition to whatever damage had happened when I hit my head, I had an additional problem in that the turbinates in my nose, which are the little structures inside that control the airflow, were growing so closely together that they were kind of essentially blocking the nasal cavity, and very little air was actually getting up to the top of the nasal cavity where the olfactory receptor cells are. So I had an operation to basically to open up the space. And what that did was I noticed within a few weeks a slight improvement in my ability to perceive the flavour of food. Not a huge amount, and I didn't suddenly start smelling things around me, but my flavour perception improved slightly, which, frankly, was better than nothing. And I think that's a really important point for others as well, in that people can sometimes have a range of issues that might be contributing to a problem with the sense of smell and taste. And I think this is why medical examination by a specialist is really important, so they can look for things like deviated septum, inflammation, things like that. I mean, I live in London, okay, which is, let's face it, a pretty polluted city, and I'm sure there must be lots of people here who suffer from rhinitis, inflammation of some sort due to pollution, whether it's due to pollen, and things like that. There is potentially treatment for, but it's about getting in front of the right person who has an interest and the knowledge and expertise to then be able to help.
And I guess thinking about it from the point of view of working with people with neurological problems, where the loss of smell I tend to encounter with people is probably due to a brain injury. Like quite a lot of other things that we deal with, you're making me think the importance of making sure that if there is a change or a loss, that we have dealt with any other reason why there might be, so that if there are parts of it that are going to be more resistant to change, we're not assuming that it is all down to, for example, a brain injury, if perhaps some of those other issues you're talking about, which I believe are relatively common, could be the case. So that sort of double checking that there isn't something else going on as well. It's very easy to assume it's one thing when it could be more than one, I guess. I'm picking up from what you're saying there. So a screening process perhaps might be quite advisable.
Yeah, I think so. I think I mean there are lots of cases where people contact us and say, I've lost my sense of smell, or it's been deteriorating for years, and sometimes don't know. They don't know why, and that can create worries for people because there are links between loss of smell and Parkinson's disease, for example. And even after specialist consultation, some people can still not have a cause identified, which can be a major concern for people. And again, that's the reality of where we are in terms of diagnosis and treatment at the moment.
So in terms of the people that get in touch with your service, how does that break down? Do you have breakdowns of the causation or likely causation or conditions that people have that it's associated with? Are there figures like that available?
In terms of the people who contact us, or thinking more broadly, I mean, potentially the most common cause or sort of group of causes are sinonasal disorders, including chronic rhinosinusitis. Chronic rhinosinusitis is probably one of the biggest causes of olfactory impairment, and it's one of the most potentially one of the most treatable. Yet we hear from lots and lots of people who have major sinus problems, who've potentially had operations, it hasn't helped. We've heard countless times from people who say that, every year or twice a year, my doctor will give me a course of steroids, and for 2 weeks I can smell, and it's wonderful. And as soon as I stop taking them, it goes again. And for me, there's that thing of, and if Carl Philpott was here, I'm sure he'd agree with me. If someone is responding like that to a course of steroids, then potentially there's more that can be done on a longer term basis. Now, I'm not a clinician, and I'm not going to sit here and say that that's the answer, but I think there are people out there, potentially lots of people out there who could be helped, but who aren't being helped.
Yeah, in terms of your question, in terms of how, what sort of the breakdown of people that make contact with us for support, it's a real mixed bag. So we ran a survey a couple of months ago now, to ascertain what sort of subjects people would be interested in engaging with in terms of topics of online support, conversations, education. And it was fairly consistently even across sort of different causations. So there were people interested who'd had a brain injury. There were people who wanted to talk about sinonasal problems. And there were people that wanted to talk about post-viral. So in terms of the causations, the responses we got back were fairly evenly spread. So there isn't a single causation that people are more concerned. I mean, currently COVID is skewing some of those figures. Yeah. But generally speaking, if you take COVID out of the equation, the main causations are fairly equal in terms of the people that we're connected with and that engage with us.
There's quite a range of people. So, so I guess I'd like to ask this question to both of you. So I'll start with Nina. Nina, what are you most excited about then in the world of smell and taste in terms of developments, possible treatments, approaches? What excites you most for the people that you're working with?
And I think there's an awful lot of potential to make massive improvements on the back of what we're learning through COVID about how prevalent smell disorders are. So I've come across people anecdotally in my own life that have said, I've never been able to smell and taste. That never thought to mention it before, but now that it's in the news, can talk about it or feel able to talk about it and feel able to be listened to and understood. So that's quite exciting that awareness is raising. I guess in terms of the work we're doing, what I'm most excited about is our Let's Talk Smell and Taste conversations, because we're offering a service that isn't provided anywhere else at the minute. And we based them on the survey that we conducted when we planned to test this out. And initially we planned to pilot one session of a Let's Talk Smell and Taste conversation. It was an opportunity for people from wherever in the world, for whatever causation, to join a conversation like this with Zoom. and talked to people that shared those experiences. And we kept it broadly generic, and I pressed send to make it live, and in between leaving my desk here and getting home, my phone was constantly just buzzing all the way. And I got home and we'd filled all the places we made available. So we quickly put 2 additional sessions on to be able to accommodate, the many people that wanted to engage with that. And we evaluated them. And without exception, the biggest comment was, it was fantastic to talk to somebody who understood. So even when treatment isn't available and a full investigations haven't been done to establish causations, just sitting there in a room full of people that knew and got it and felt the same was massively uplifting for a lot of people. So I think in lieu of medical developments or availability, having mutual peer support is massively important to people and makes people feel so much better, just simply by talking to somebody who understands. So I'm really excited about how we're doing that, and we've planned our autumn winter program to provide lots of topics that people have told us they're interested in. So medical developments people are interested in, research people are interested in, food and drink massively interested in, smell training people are interested in that and talking about how to smell train simply and cost effectively, and also how to support somebody that they live with that has a smell and taste disorder, because it impacts on their life. So we're running a whole raft of these sessions. Every time we release 3 for July, and within an hour they're gone. So we know they're really popular, and we're going to do many, many more of them, because I think that's a service need that can be really beneficial, very cost effective, and supports people that aren't able to access medical treatments or are delayed in their medical treatments.
And I guess you probably had that same thing that most people have when they first decide they'll launch a group, and you wonder whether anyone will sign up. And I mean, it's answered its own question in that sense, that you've got so much demand, which is fascinating. That's a real indicator of need, isn't it?
Yeah.
Duncan, can I ask you, what are you most excited about in the world that you're supporting at the moment?
I think for me, it's about what's been really, really exciting over recent weeks and months is seeing a real sort of upswell of interest in the work that we're doing, and partly due to COVID-19, but also partly because of the increased level of activity that we're doing, admittedly a lot of it online rather than face to face, because we've got Nina in post who's able to drive this forwards. And just to give you some context, Vicki, we were, I started Fifth Sense with a blank sheet of paper back in 2012, and for a period of time it was just me. We had a meeting with someone I know from the fragrance industry the other week, and she said, who was around at the beginning, she said, back at the beginning it was like the Duncan show. And those days are gone. And it's the thing that I'm really excited about is how more and more people are coming on board, and more of our beneficiaries saying, look, how can I get involved? How can I use my experience to change things for the better, to help other people? And we've got the capacity to be able to facilitate that a lot better now. Because this is the thing, I created, one of the reasons I created Fifth Sense was to provide a credible platform for others affected by a problem with their sense of smell taste, to stand on and use their experience to raise awareness, to change people's understanding, to support one another. And it's really, really exciting for me to sort of to see this happening.
Absolutely, I can feel your excitement through the screen, and I, when you hear how much there was, how there was nothing to begin with, and then you move to the situation you have now, and what Nina's describing about her phone pinging with continual bookings on those group events. That's quite a shift. You've achieved an amazing amount, and I'm sure there's plenty more to be achieved. In terms of, I'd like to pick up on the smell training. What's the research behind that? Is that something that has an evidence base, or is that something that is still, the evidence is still being gathered on?
There has been research done to support its effectiveness. Quite a lot has been done by Professor Thomas Hummel in Germany, and in actual fact, it was his 2009 study that I read about back in 2011. I contacted Thomas myself, and it was Thomas that introduced me to Carl. So, Thomas and his work has a big part to play in the beginnings of Fifth Sense. So yeah, it can help some people, and the research shows that potentially it's of most benefit to people affected by post-viral olfactory loss, but it can help people with other causations as well. The thing is, it's something that anyone can do. Okay, it's about mindful sniffing, mindful smelling, and it could be a case of back in the day when I started trying it myself, I was opening the kitchen cupboards, I was getting all my spice jars out, I was sniffing things. I remember running the taps when washing up and squeezing the lemon flavored washing up liquid into the bowl and sort of inhaling the steam. It's something that anyone can do simply and quickly. And Nina has this is an area that she's been working on, developing the smellability toolkit on our website. Nina.
Pick up on that, Nina. Mindful sniffing.
Yeah, mindful. Well, somebody said it's a gym for your nose, and it's a really good description, actually. I think you wrote it, Duncan, in the intro to the old smell training page that we had on the website. So we've just taken it a little bit further, really, and we talk about people's ability to smell. So we coined the phrase smellability. It's what's your smellability? Everyone either has zero smellability or has great smellability. So we sort of based it on that, and we provide a raft of tools. So first stage would be to just test what you're able to smell and what your level is, from no functionality at all to actually getting a faint whiff, or I can smell that particular scent, and then benchmarking that and repeating that sort of test so that you know if there's change over time. We provide a diary log, so if somebody enters formal smell training or takes on board formal smell training twice a day, on top of, as Duncan describes, the importance of being aware of your surroundings and not just concentrating on a couple of 10-minute sessions a day, but a bit like going to the gym. You're not going to get results tomorrow when you've only started today, and if you give up, you don't give up too soon. Persevere with it, try it, experiment with it, what works for you. And we also talk about on there using things that you're familiar with. So if you know that you love the smell of coffee in the morning, smell coffee. See if you can use your memories and how you felt about that first cup of coffee in the morning to try and stimulate the emotion that's connected to smell, even if the actual physical sensation of smell isn't there. And then we provide sort of a video on there which sort of talks the way through smell training using what's in your cupboard. So if it's ripping some fresh herbs and sniffing the essential oils that come out of the herbs, or peeling an orange, which again releases the essential oils in the orange peel. But if you've got a recollection of what the orange smells of, use those memories and those familiar things to you. So don't stick with the recommendations necessarily, because they might not mean anything to you. If you don't know what rose smells of, then try and find a smell that you do know what to expect when you take an inhalation. So we also provide a diary log so people can do this over a period of time and detect any slight changes to encourage them to continue or to pursue a certain line. So a whole raft of tools all available on the website that people can dip in and out of. And we launched it, I think, the 26th of June. And there's been thousands of downloads of some of the materials on there, which is really encouraging that we're getting something right and we're providing something that people need and want to use. So
you're really certainly getting a lot of feedback, aren't you, in terms of people engaging with what you're doing. And we will put the website links on the end of the video, so that people can pick it up from there as well. So in terms of smell, if you have no sense of smell, but you have had in the past in your life, is it the case that you do have a memory? Can you remember a smell?
That's a good question.
I'm
gonna let you share your experience of that, because it's quite an interesting take.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, that, because you're talking to someone who, when I lost my sense of smell, right, I was a 22-year-old guitarist in a band, right. I was more focused on my ears than anything else, and I'd never really paid any attention to my sense of smell. It was there, and all of a sudden it wasn't, and I didn't really sort of actively engage with my loss as I should have done, really. And I now regret not being more aware and being more attentive of my sense of smell when I did have it, because I've forgotten a lot of smells. I've a lot of things have gone. I can't even smell I can't remember what garlic smells like, which is probably crazy to a lot of people. But there are some things that, when prompted, and if I give myself the time and space to think about it, I can still recall. And a few years ago, we've done some work with the University of Florida Center for Smell and Taste in Gainesville, Florida. And we've done a couple of events in partnership with them in the US, aimed at people in the States affected by smell and taste disorders. And I've worked very closely with our director, Steve Munger, in organising events. And I remember in the run to the first one, and I was on the phone to Steve, and he was talking about where we were going to hold the meal after the first day of the conference. And it was in the Natural History Museum. And I was looking at the website, and he was talking to me about the butterfly garden. And I had this really, really vivid recall of the smell that you get when you go to somewhere like Kew Gardens, or an indoor space where you've got damp, you've got peaty soil. It's that really sort of specific smell. And that just came back to me, and it was like it was there again. And I sort of thought, that is a smell memory that is absolutely imprinted on one sort of environment, and one sort of environment only for me. And it came back, and it was like it was there again. And when these moments happen, it's really, really quite powerful. So I might not be able to smell the smell, but I can still access it. I can still access the memory.
So there's a link there for me between your description of that experience and what Nina's talking about there, of trying to help people get in touch with those memories and think about something that was a favourite thing, and the circumstance, everything else, I suppose, sensorily that would surround that experience, to try and link to it. And I guess that's perhaps what happened in that call, in that moment. It linked it all for you, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our memories of things are made up of a combination of sensory experiences. The visuals, the sounds, the smells, and I think also with smells themselves, the memories that are associated with those, are not necessarily smells in their own right, but there's input from other senses as well. So how can we help people recall and enjoy those smell memories? And that's something that we're really, really keen to work on and develop.
One thing I've learned from joining, and again, it was when I was first looking at the job and researching it. My children are almost grown up now, but I still know what they smell of, their baby smell as a mum. And I can almost bring that, as Duncan said, to this room right now, because I know what that smells of. But I hadn't realised the importance of memory until I started researching and got involved with smell and taste disorders. But I now know that is so important that I create those memory boxes, because, as we know, age-related degeneration, I could lose my sense of smell as I get older. But I know I can pull, and it is quite strange, because if you really think about it, I can smell them. Even though they're not here and they're grown up, and my 15-year-old does not smell like he smelled when he was a 6-month-old baby in any way, shape or form, but I can bring that smell almost to my nose just by thinking about it and remembering. And like Duncan says, you know, I can see myself walking up and down with my baby on my shoulder when he was crying, and he's very close to me, so I can smell him. So I can bring that back to life without actually physically smelling, using those memories.
So that imprinting that Duncan's talking about.
Yeah.
And earlier, Nina, you were mentioning the link with food, and obviously smell and taste are very connected, aren't they? And you were making me think about a session I went to earlier this year, where a dietitian was talking about sense of smell and the importance in terms of flavour and taste. And we had some foods to try. And we had foods to try with nose clips on. We had foods to try with different textures. We had some of the softened foods that some patients require for other reasons. And we were really encouraged to think about, if you lose your sense of smell and you need something that doesn't have texture, and then a whole range of sauces, different flavours to add to it. And it was a very interesting experience, because again, it's not something that I think most people in that room had thought about. But there are, as well as the memories, there are other things, I think, aren't there, that you can look at to sort of substitute in a way, in terms, when particularly think about food here, in terms of texture, flavour, to add a kick, or to add to another sense, which doesn't make up for it, but perhaps give some more joy to eating again. Is that something, do you link with dietitians and people who are looking at speech and language therapists, looking at that side of food consistency?
We do, and I've a feeling that the session that you went to was actually run by a dietitian who we have links with. Sherry, by any chance? Yes. Yeah, we know Sherry. Yeah, she's been to a couple of the Fifth Sense conferences. I mean, my experience, I'm a bit of a foodie, despite not being able to appreciate, most of the flavour of food. But I've really learned to make use of, the remaining abilities I do have. And people say to me, "Oh, you can't smell. Does that mean you can't taste then?" And I go, "Well, actually, my sense of taste is really, really quite good." But what I'm talking about is my, the true sense of taste, basic taste: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, umami. And I've learned to, become very attuned to the sort of, different levels of those, because they don't necessarily occur in isolation. If you, let's use, real ale as an example. If you, one sort of beer might contain a very different level of hops, and therefore bitterness, sweetness and sourness, to another one. And actually, once you're aware of this, and you can essentially attach a label to these different tastes, and you know what they all are, and you're aware of them when you're eating and drinking, you can then try one next to the other, and you can spot the difference. And then adding things like texture, the temperature of food, spiciness that comes from chili. All those things come from what's called the trigeminal nerve, which is not smell, it's not taste, it's basically physical sensation in the mouth, nose, or face. So it is. I know that the impact on. I know myself that the impact on the eating experience of smell loss is huge for people. But what we're working to do is help people to give them tools, give them ideas, give them support to help them focus on the things that they can still appreciate and enjoy, and enjoy those, and move away from focusing on the things that they're missing on that loss.
It's really interesting, because I'm just in touch this week actually with somebody who found us, who has aguesia as a result of a head injury. So he can smell, but he can't taste. And so he says, he can go into a restaurant and he can smell the garlic, and he's almost salivating at the thought of it. And when he puts it on his tongue, nothing. So he's been in contact with us, and he's actually doing a little piece of writing for our newsletter about the flip side of smell and taste disorders, which he's less focused on, in terms of his inability to actually taste anything in his mouth, but he savours the smell. So it's almost it's the other side of this whole system that affects our ability to enjoy food and drink. So, but he does a similar technique about textures. He does get the trigeminal stimulation, so he can feel things in his facial area that are stimulated, but he just has no concept of the taste or flavour of it because he has no taste buds that are working on his tongue. But he uses memory as well. I try. I can smell the garlic, so I try and imagine I can taste it. So it's quite an interesting area to look at in terms of the other side of the importance of food and drink and the system working together.
Yeah, and I'm glad we sort of come to that on taste as well, because it is like the reverse, the flip side, as you say, isn't it? And I guess then really important to figure out exactly where the issue is in order to think about how best to use all of the other options that there might be. And if I got this right from the learning I did earlier in the year, I think I understood that the senses that you mentioned, Duncan, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami, is that correct?
Yeah.
They're all tongue-based, yes?
Right, yeah.
And then the rest of flavour in food comes from the sense of smell. So the food thing is a particular thing where smell and taste or tongue functions and smell functions are conjoined normally, usually.
Yes.
I find that very fascinating for the patients that you've just described, Nina, and the kind of problems you've got, Duncan, and you would do almost the reverse for each of those sort of presentations, wouldn't you, in terms of what you're trying to achieve there? Fascinating. It's not something that we have been looking to do, I don't think, as a rehab.
I think the message that we try and give is, use what you've got. So, use your memory, use your eyes, use your ears, use your feelings, and whichever bit's missing in that link, just use the best of everything else to get the best possible experience you can get. And that's something I've learned from talking with Duncan over the months, that it's putting it's trying to be positive and giving people some positivity and inspiration, I guess, from other people's experiences where they have used that and used their other senses to mitigate the loss of one of them.
Absolutely. And I think there's something else there that's really, really, really important, and something we're increasingly doing, and that's how we work with and support significant others of people affected by a problem of smell and taste, so that they can then be sympathetic to whether it's their partner, whether it's their mother, father, and help them, whether it's around the dinner table. And food's a really interesting one, because eating and drinking forms the backdrop to so many of our social interactions. And loss of smell or taste can really, really have a huge impact on the enjoyment of the eating and drinking experience. And that can then, we've seen it from the research we've done. I've seen comments from people saying that I don't go out to restaurants anymore because it's a bad reminder of how things used to be. I don't go around for dinner at friends' houses anymore because I feel like I'm a fraud, which is terrible. It's terrible. I don't feel like that. But it's about how we can then support our beneficiaries and the people around them to actually get more positivity into that experience and feel better about it again.
And I love the fact that you described the things that you can do. It's about having your mind open to what those are, but that they are very practical things that each person can take on and do. And indeed significant others, partners, people who are supporting somebody with a loss of smell and or taste. But these are everyday real world things. They're not expensive things. They're not unreachable. They don't need lots of equipment. They do need the information that you guys are providing, I think. And for me, that's what's been missing, and why when I stumbled across you, which actually I did because my son doesn't have much of a sense of smell, and I thought I ought to get checked out why. And he never has had, and he isn't bothered, which is perhaps another thing, that if you haven't lost something, maybe that's a different thing. But the consultant at the time, seeing me as a worried mum, waved a fifth sense leaflet at me, which is actually how I came across you. So not through my work, in fact. So I think this is an area that I imagine is just going to grow and grow, and I hope what we've done today is to capture something that will get people thinking, and I guess that's a lot of what you're trying to do, particularly for the professionals, which we should be noticing and not just writing it down, but thinking about what we can do about that.
Absolutely. Get people thinking, get people talking, and then get people really interested in working together and working with us to help sort of drive this change in understanding and recognition, and just work with us to help the people we represent.
And do you have a parting message, Nina?
Yeah, I think it's just reiterate what Duncan's just said, and it's let's talk, smell and taste.
I think I have one final question, which has to go to you, Duncan. If I were going to say, not that we can easily do this distance-wise or COVID-wise, I guess, at the moment, but if I were going to say, Duncan, let me take you out to dinner, I will buy you dinner anywhere you like, what would you choose? I'm going to have to deliver on this now in the real world, aren't I?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to know, what would you choose to eat?
I'm going to write down what I think he's. I'm going to write down what I think he might say.
I know what Nina's going to. I know what Nina's going to write down. Nina's going to write down curry, isn't she, Nina?
Beef madras.
Beef madras.
Okay, beef madras.
You know what? Indian food is one of my absolute loves, and it was before I lost my sense of smell, and it still is now. There's just so much going on there, but I think it's any food that's prepared using a range of different stimuli. It's contrast all the way. And Indian food's a great example of that. You've got the spices, you've got different temperatures with ice cold yogurt on the side of a hot curry. Yeah.
And different colours. Indian food is very colourful, and I guess that's part of the experience too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, fantastic. And I am, in fact, off for my first meal in a restaurant this evening since lockdown, and I am going to an Indian restaurant. So I will raise a glass to you two.
Please do.
Thank you so much for joining me today. That's been
thank you.
Fascinating look at something that I think will fascinate many other people too. Duncan, Nina, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Vicki.
you.
Thank you very much indeed.